Scafflogic introduces you to a world of logic. Hello and welcome to this Scafflogic training video. Today I would like to demonstrate how to add extra bays on an already built scaffold. In this video, I will be using Lyre All-Around Scaffold. If you have a different scaffold brand, you may notice that I have different measurements and components available for use. As you can see, I have already built a scaffold against a gable, and now we would like to trim the sections. We would like to be able to reach the whole gable from the scaffold top level. First, I will take this section and raise it by going down into the Content menu and selecting Add Bay. As you can see, the system automatically adds the bay without any problem, and the other side looks okay and within the 200 centimeter limit from the deck level. If we want to continue this process, we can select the middle bay, go back to the Content menu, select Add Bay, and choose from the Add Custom Bay menu. Let's go ahead and choose 250 centimeters because that will fit exactly to our desired height. Let's go to the next section and try to place another bay. This time we will go into Column and add Standard Bay, and it will duplicate the bay we added a moment ago. If this is not what we want, we can always go back, remove the bay, and force the system to create another bay for us. This time, let's choose 200 centimeters instead, and you can see the difference in height instantly. We can create the same bay on the other side. Right-click, Column, Custom, 200 centimeters. And now we have trimmed our top section height very nicely. Let's, just for practice, build one more up, only this time a little higher. This time I will select 300 centimeters so it will be easier to see what I'm doing. The system will build it up without taking into consideration whether or not it is properly secured. You will need to add bracing afterwards. Bear that in mind when you are building scaffolds. Let's remove this practice scaffold and see the final results of our efforts. And there you go. At the moment, we have inside guardrails installed on the scaffolding, and if you plan on allowing workers to move around freely between the levels, you will need to manually remove them.